We always wanted what America had. We always wanted our Al Capone. We always wanted our Legs Diamond. We had finally got it with the Richardsons.
There was no one tougher than us.
The Sabini gang, Billy Hill, Jack Spot, the Richardsons and the Krays, founding members of London's infamous 20th century underworld.
If the Krays were around today, had they been released, had they still been alive, they would be on Celebrity Big Brother and winning it.
I'm Matt, this is Underworld Uncut, and this week we're going inside the world of the gangs who established the blueprint for organised crime in the city, London's original gangsters.
Gangland life was a conglomeration of different firms, coming from different angles, doing different things. Long firm, protection money, nightclubs, gambling, just come in. Pavement artists, people would go out and wage snatching, bank robbery, post office robbery. They were all specialists in their field.
There was always little squabbles and little reputations made. You go down the side of the copy stall, down the side of the road and have a straightener. They'd make a circle and you'd have a straightener, a fight, like bare knuckle fight. That was how your reputation, I fought in all, every one of them.
We even had people like a man called Johnny the Bosch, who you'd bring in and he could open any door. He was what you call a twirler. He could twirl the keys. And there was them kind of characters. Every firm had a character. And in them days, you'd meet up at lunchtime in a pub and firms would cross each other. But we've got a bit of work here, we need your man here, or we need that guy here. And so firms were interchanging all the time.
London's underworld didn't appear overnight. It grew from the city's poorest streets, where hardship, crime and survival often went hand in hand. To understand the rise of the gangs, we must first look at how the underworld itself came into being.
If you look at the power, the circle of power, the rich made the rules that we live by today to keep their wealth. And then our people went, well, actually, we don't like your rules because that's geared up in your favour. So maybe we'll make our own rules that are geared up in our favour. And that is why you've got the criminal underworld. So we said, no, you were robbers, slavers and God knows what else. So we can do the same. And this time we ain't going to give the money to you lot, we're going to keep it. We want a bigger piece of the action. And that is where gangs formed, the criminal underworld. It's gone back years.
So you had all these kind of different groupings of people. Prostitution was run by the Maltese. The clever boys knew how to get in and do the long firm stuff. And the wage snatchers, they would meticulously plot different robberies from Securicore wagons, which weren't as tight as they are today, or post offices or banks, because in the old days 2 or 3 people would take a bag to the bank and people would jump out on them, spray them with ammonia, hit them with koshes. And there were heavy people like the twins who minded different clubs and gambling and all the rest of it. Opportunists.
Racketeering was a normal way of life. And when you come from South London, North London, you do what you've got to do to survive.
When people think of London's gangsters, it's often the biggest names that come to mind. But the capital's underworld is never ruled by a single gang. Across different eras, dozens of firms battled for territory, influence and power.
The Krays weren't the only firm in London, heavy duty. There was the Richardsons, the Nashes, all solid firms.
The East End, it's always had that charisma. Everybody thinks that all the criminals and all the gangsters come from the East End. It's got that sort of reference about it, but it's no different to South London, other parts of London, all the areas at Notting Hill, Chelsea, they've all had their rough areas.
There's always a bit of rivalry, like any football teams, same thing, isn't it? Nothing that couldn't be solved, there's nothing like a bit of gang warfare now and again anyway to liven things up.
When you think they say that the Krays ruled London, they didn't rule London, they was just part of London that they were well known and respected. But every part of London had their own different people with their own firms.
Long before the Krays and the Richardsons, the Sabini gang emerged as one of London's most powerful criminal organisations. Based in Clerkenwell, then known as London's Little Italy, the Sabini gang was led by Charles Darby Sabini, the feared kingpin, many regarded as the godfather.
The Sabinis were the big racecourse gang. They'd been running, they were Anglo-Italians, although they were called the Sabinis and the Italian gang. I don't think they actually spoke Italian, but they were the racecourse protection racketeers of the end of the First World War through the 20s, through the 30s. And they were the big London villains. The Sabinis battled against the Jewish mob, they battled against the Elephant and Castle mob, and Sabini, by all accounts, did look after the area. Darbo Sabini was meant to be a very, very benevolent villain. The stories of him are very much that he ran, obviously, a protection racket, but he did actually keep Clerkenwell safe for the Italian community.
Known as the boss of Britain's underworld, Billy Hill rose from the streets of London to become one of the most powerful criminals of his generation.
Billy Hill was the successor, as it were, to the Sabinis.
Billy Hill was something of a criminal genius. And Billy Hill for years had managed to establish himself in the West End of London in gambling clubs, largely illegal gambling clubs. And he knew how gambling works, he knew how the security for these gambling clubs worked.
From the mid-1940s, Hill worked alongside a man known as Jack Spot Comer.
His real name was either Comer or Camacho, it depends on which version you read. How did he get his name Jack Spot? He either had a mole on his face, or he said because he was on the spot when anyone needed him.
Well, Jack Spot, he got to the front in the underworld. He cut a lot of people, most of them just ordinary rascals, no real fight in them, but Spot cut them. Of course, that kept putting him up in the air.
Hill and Spot ran the West End with a benevolent dictatorship. They took money off what was called the smudge, which were fake photographs being taken of tourists in Trafalgar Square. They ran the peanut selling rackets. In those days, you used to sell sixpence worth of peanuts to tourists to feed the pigeons. They ran everything in Soho, and they ran it, and there was no trouble.
Billy Hill's rise to the top came at Jack Spot's expense. Their partnership turned into a bitter feud, and Spot broke the code of the underworld.
Billy Hill never ever dreamt that Spot would nick us going to the police, no. He didn't like him, but he didn't think he'd be that wicked, because in our world, to go to the police and say someone hit you with an hammer or something, that wasn't allowed. You never done that. Billy Hill and that made a decision, and then you just obeyed that decision. Spot had to be done, that meant he had to go, yeah. And so I cut him.
As Billy Hill's influence began to fade, a new generation of gangsters emerged to fill the void. In the 1960s, brothers Charlie and Eddie Richardson ruled South London's underworld. Alongside their enforcer, Mad Frankie Fraser, the brothers built a criminal empire that became known for money, violence and torture.
The Richardsons are very powerful because the Richardsons, if they had anything, they had money. And money in itself is power.
They were doing deals. They was buying their bank gear, selling it. They were business type things. They were top of their game in what they was doing. They had the scrap yards and all that sort of thing. They were money getters.
You didn't mess about with them kind of people. They had the West End sewn up. They had several other enterprises sewn up as well. One of them being Heathrow Airport, which was the car parking and other things.
My brother, he was a good fighter, he's a powerful boy, not me. He never had to stab anybody or shoot anybody. Never got done for anything like that, did they?
He was a terrific guy, Eddie, yeah. I liked him. Him and his brother Charlie, you couldn't meet two nicer guys. So both very intelligent and bright guys.
The Richardsons would hurt you, but they never killed anybody. Eddie knew how far to push it, so did Frank. They knew just when to stop.
We were really two hard-working, straight guys. As simple as that.
Look, in life, you can't have people upset you. You could go to the police about them, you could sue them in court, but you wouldn't get your money back. It cost you more money giving it to other policemen, you understand? So you have a bit of an argument, and you give a couple of right-handers, so that's the end of it. Wouldn't you like to get a couple of right-handers for 5,000 or 6,000 quid or 10, wouldn't you? And that's the end of it.
Charlie was purely about business. Charlie had the scrapyard, he was paying taxes, he was a businessman.
By the mid-1960s, London was divided between two criminal powers, the Richardsons in the south and the Krays in the east. The Kray twins, Ronnie and Reggie, would become the most famous gangsters in British history, but not without a bit of help from another OG.
Billy Hill brought the Krays on, he mentored them, he taught them the business, and when gambling became legalised in 1960, then the Krays were able to move into the West End and start to make serious money, but they were not good businessmen.
Well, you had the Krays and the Richardsons. They were the names. So, that, if you like, they was looked at as godfathers. They were the top of the league. The Krays on a different level because there was violence and so there was fear. But Richardsons was looked at like really as movers and shakers. If you was a criminal, you aspired to either being like the Krays where people feared you. Now, the Richardsons were respected because they were money getters.
I dare say Ronnie and Reggie were a bit jealous of Charlie and Eddie because they were successful businessmen.
The Krays didn't live amongst the general public. They lived in an underworld. They lived in a place of other gangsters. They lived in clubs. They lived in pubs. They lived in casinos. This was their world.
The twins, they had that family thing. They were like your film stars are to the other kids, the pop idols, you know. And if you was going to be a villain, that's what you was aspiring to. But there was also that really love mum, love your family. If you don't respect your family, you don't respect no one. And if you want respect, you've got to give respect.
These guys were society figures. They'd been on TV, they'd been interviewed on the BBC about their activities in London's nightlife. They were on the front pages and the back pages of the East London Advertiser most weeks throughout the 1960s. No one really knew very much about them, but people knew they were there. These were celebrity gangsters.
By the early 1960s, tension between South London's Richardson gang and the Kray twins in the East End had escalated into one of the most infamous rivalries in British criminal history.
The Richardsons and the Krays were, putting it neutrally, sort of getting on each other's nerves. How much of the story that they were really geared up for a great war depends on to whom you listen and what you believe. But there is no doubt there was serious friction.
The Krays did not like the Richardsons, and the Richardsons didn't really have any one opinion or the other about the Krays.
It wasn't into what I was into. They was all good boys, but I was, you know, we was so far ahead of them, you understand?
Whether the rivalry was real or exaggerated by gangland folklore, one thing is beyond dispute. Violence was the force that underpinned London's underworld.
Everyone was doing it. They was all stabbing each other up and nailing people up to walls and God knows what else. And what happened behind closed doors never got reported to the police. You know, there was people that was tortured, there was people that were blinded.
It could be deadly, it could be serious. Firearms were used, but rarely. Knives, rarely. Razors were very popular at this time. Through the 20s, right the way into the 60s, the cutthroat razor was a weapon of choice, and the cutthroat razor was rarely deadly. Unless you were unlucky and caught an artery, people wouldn't die, but they would be left with very deep and visible wounds.
Hill had a trademark of a V/ himself, and he also paid, apparently, by the stitch. So if you put 50 stitches in a man's face, you could expect £50. And apparently people looked in the newspapers to see the next day how many stitches had been put in their victim's face and how much they were due to be paid.
Former firm member Lenny Hamilton had his own violent encounter with Ronnie Kray.
He said, right, you can go now. And as I went to walk out, he said, get hold of him. Two of the big geezers got hold of me. And as he turned, I see these pokers on the gas. He said, now I'm going to burn your fucking eyes out. And he's coming at me with a poker, and I had black curly hair at the time. Burnt all the hair off me, burnt the suit off me. He held it across there. He went and got another one, held it across there, burnt all my eyebrows off of me. But that's how I'm nearly blind in that eye, and almost deaf in that ear. Because then he went and got an hammer. You know what they beat steak with, them hammers? He smashed me in the ear, done my eardrum, and all the blood come out, like, you know. Then he went back and got another poker. And someone shouted out, no, Ron, not that. And he just stopped, like that. He said, right, you can go now.
Ronnie Kray was far from alone in using violence to maintain control. When Charlie Richardson suspected the con man, Jack the Rat Duval, of defrauding him, he took matters into his own hands.
What happened, I bought 1,000 sets of cutlery, like in a box, and I forget how many bits in there. And I was saying, Jake, asking me a question, and he would tell me fucking lies, and I threw a fucking knife at him, or a fork, whatever. No, I mean, just to shut him up and say, now tell me the fucking truth.
Keen to send a strong message, the Richardsons seized Duval's associate, Lucian Harris. Harris claimed he was tortured for information, that Charlie Richardson attached wires to his genitals via a black box and delivered electric shocks. He testified that he was then stabbed in the foot by one of the Richardsons' henchmen.
Bollocks, all mythology by newspapers. They've even got a black box, electric box. What they said it was ours, nothing to do with us at all. They went and bought it and produced it at the trial and said it was a box like this. But an expert said it couldn't. It would only be a tingle anyway, if they did use it.
Torture is a very, very dangerous word to use, because if you bash someone up and people go, oh, you know, I was tortured, then when you get cases where people really are tortured, where they got Banana Republic regimes where they're having their teeth pulled out with pliers and that sort of thing, electrocution, then it takes that, it waters that down.
Nobody got tortured. You find me somebody who got tortured, bring them to me. The other one, Lucian Harris, said I stabbed him through the foot. And Harris has given me a statement since then, retracting it all, telling exactly what the police made him do. He feels bad about it.
Charlie probably gave people very bad beating or a good hiding, but they wouldn't have got it if they didn't deserve it.
Frank was alleged to have, well, this was the prosecution's case, had pulled the teeth out of some man with a pair of pliers, no anaesthetic.
When I was doing that 20 years, wouldn't I loved it if I could have been in my cell going, oh, what a good job you made of that back molar. It wasn't true though, unfortunately.
The allegation was another had wires attached to his genitals, another, the story went that he'd been nailed to the floor, generally very badly beaten, in what was called the torture trial.
I don't think the Krays, after they torture people, give anyone a clean shirt. That's the sort of gentleman Charlie was, you know. You're not going to go home to your family looking a mess.
They were all as hard, very hard men. People were terrified of Freddie Foreman. They were frightened of the Richardsons, but who has lasted? Where the films made, they're made about the Krays.
But even in that world, there were rules. Boundaries were understood, and breaking them could be just as dangerous as any act of violence itself.
In them days, we had our own way of settling things. We had our own rules. We had our own laws. There's things you do and things you don't do. You don't go and rape women and children, right? You will be taken away and sorted. You don't burgle your next door neighbour. There was a law that you don't hurt your own. If I had a contract out on you and they wanted me to shoot your kneecaps or whack you, I couldn't do it in front of your wife and kids. I'd have to wait till there was a time because we wouldn't want it done in front of our wife and kids.
Anybody who didn't obey them rules, they were soon bashed up.
In the criminal world, if you commit one mistake, that's all you've got to do. If you made a statement and give evidence for the prosecution, that would live with you till you go to your grave. And that is the code, if you can like to call it a code. That is what people live by. And no matter what the situation is or what you're charged with, you never make a statement and rat on your friends.
So if you like, in our world, discipline was quick, it was fair, because they knew what they were signing up to. Every one of us, even me, when I entered this world, I knew what I was signing up to. I knew the rules of that world and I had to obey those rules, and so did everyone else.
For all their violence and notoriety, these men were ultimately driven by profit. Each gang found its own way to make money.
What happened was that if you were a bookmaker at the racecourse, you paid the Sabinis 2 and 6pence for what were called the tissues, which were the racing form sheets. Another 6pence for having your blackboard wiped of the odds. Another 6pence here, another 6pence there.
Frankie Fraser began his criminal career in the horse racing world with the Sabini gang, wiping their blackboards clean after each race.
At the races, I'd be bucket boy and things like that. Remember, I was only like 10, 11, 12 years of age, so whatever I had to do, I done, and I was happy to do it. I could come home to Mum with a few bob and treat her. Oh, she thought, what wonderful days.
There was a lot of money to be earned then, you know, with all the electrical goods coming into the country. We'd never seen Hoover cleaners and washing machines and refrigerators, but everyone wanted them, didn't they? And if you could supply them at a third of the prices for the normal person in the street, the working class, and it was a thriving industry for people like myself. We could empty the Krays and all them electrical shops for them and sell them at a third of the price. So we made quite a bit of money and got popularity.
One particular gangster didn't waste his time with stolen washing machines. His sights were set much higher.
Billy Hill had a brilliant coup. He organised a thing called the East Castle robbery. There was a post office van which they hijacked. No one was caught. Much of the money, probably around 200,000, which would be an enormous sum today, disappeared. And Billy Hill was made.
The total haul of the robbery was actually 287 grand in cold, hard cash, worth about £9.5 million in today's money.
Not content with the East Castle robbery, Billy Hill organises another in Lincoln's Inn when a whole load of bullion goes.
In fact, in the 1954 gold bullion raid, 45 grams worth of gold was stolen off the back of a lorry in broad daylight.
Anybody who can organise the East Castle street robbery and the Lincoln's Inn Fields bullion robbery and nobody is caught. It's quite wrong to admire villains, but you have to have a sneaking admiration for somebody who can do that.
Charlie's money-making business started in South London with Peckford Scrap Metals.
But it didn't want a lot of buying power, did it? You know what the price of a bit of lead was, what you could sell it for, you understand? And it was a matter of just getting as much as you could buy, wasn't it? Off all the dealers, totters, doors and carts, people with lorries and vans pull up, put on a weighbridge.
Well, they're in the scrap metal business and car business and everything. You name it, they are in it. They'd have a go at anything. Not all honest, but nowhere near that people think, or as the police or the authorities made them out to be.
If anybody had it in their arse, we thought we could earn £1 out of it, we would buy it crooked, you understand? A lot of the time, the crooked metal, stuff like that, I never asked too many questions about it, did you? Otherwise people wouldn't come here, they'd go somewhere else.
Charlie was a businessman. If Charlie had been brought up in a different time, in a different family, Charlie Richardson would have probably been one of your top businessmen, probably knighted or whatever, because he was about money. Charlie was purely about money.
A classic way for many of London's OGs to make some money were the so-called long-firm frauds.
You hire an office in an area, say Great Portland Street or Oxford Street. There's offices everywhere, and what you do, you get a line of credit. I.e. if it's kind of shoes, you'll buy a 50 pair of shoes and you'll pay them.
You have to build confidence up in the company. You give them an order, you pay cash for it or pay it up quick, then you won't give them another order.
But then you'll go for the big one and after a while, and you'll hit them maybe for 5,000 pairs of shoes. But you'll say, we want this order, but quite frankly, we don't have the ability to pay you up front.
And in the end, you just close up shop. Disappear, company disappears, or you think of a way of doing it nicely, a robbery or a fire.
And then the vendors will be looking for their money and they'll go to the offices or send bailiffs around there, there'll be nobody there, it's just gone. And that's basically long firms.
London's OGs understood that they didn't always have to rob a bank to make money.
At a corner in Salthouse Street, I bought a lot of stuff of John Major's father. I thought he was a major. I never realised it's the Prime Minister's father. Because I wanted the premises because I bought 2 million Christmas cards. And I wanted to sort them out in there. And these cards, 2 million cards, I had a nice box made, 24 in a box, and about 8 women sorting them all out. I had a nice few quid out of it. 2 million cards. Because we knew all the wholesalers, they was glad to buy them of us.
While the Richardsons used their brains, followed up by muscle to make money, the Krays took a different approach.
When it first started, people went to them because if they had a troublesome business, a nightclub or a public house where it's a bit rough, they would welcome the twins into the business and put them on a wage because they would have no more trouble. It was a sort of protection business that was beneficial to both sides.
The crimes that the Krays were found guilty of were not instrumental crimes. They were not the crimes of gangsters. They weren't earning money out of it. They were quite extraordinary crimes. It's not although they were taking on Gangland competitors. They were killing people, if not at random, they were killing people who had insulted them. They were killing people who they didn't want around, who they didn't like, but they were quite unnecessary killings.
The Krays were just basically bullies who were taking money off of people. And so that was the difference with them, different mentality.
They made them living through violence or the threat of violence. And that's all you can say about it. But they become the coin, the phrase of violence in the East End. It was an East End thing.
But the OGs didn't exist in isolation. London's gangsters also moved through a wider social scene in the West End. The aristocracy, boxers and celebrities often overlapped with the underworld, blurring the line between notoriety and fame.
The villains of the 1960s were starting to present themselves as being celebrities. You know, various gangsters were coming out of prison at this time. They were being interviewed on TV.
When all the stars came over here and appeared at the Pagao or different shows in the West End, they always sought out the twins for some reason or other. I don't know why.
Well, gangsters, you know.
See,
They were good dressers, good personalities, really, you know.
Even in America, the same thing. Why did the gangsters in America attract the film stars and all that?
There was Tony Bennett, Judy Garland, Sophie Tucker, Billy Daniels. I mean, there were endless people coming over. I mean, and all the boxing world, all the fighters from America, all the top fighters, Rocky Graziano, Archie Moore. I mean, you met all the top fighters. I was very impressed because I was very excited about meeting people like that, more so than the stars. And the old timers like Ted Kid Lewis, Jack Kid Berg, and all from the East End, world champions, you know.
For most of these men, prison wasn't the end of the story. It was simply part of it. Time inside was just another chapter for London's OGs.
When I arrived at Leicester, the governor comes in with the chief. He said to me, if it's true what you're supposed to have done, Foreman, he said, you need a medal the size of a dustbin lid. I might as well drop dead if that is not the truth. He said, is there anything I can do for you? I said, I don't want no special treatment. You come and see me in a week's time to come down and I might have a few ideas, you know, and laughed it off and made a joke of it. And sure enough, the governor got the kitchen to send us over the food so we could cook it ourselves in the kitchen. He used to send us over the tins of tomatoes to make our spaghetti bolognese and a lump of cheese, which is not eating prison food. And he got his local butcher to order joints of beef and steaks. So we finished up, he got a fella from the council who was a chef who came in and taught us how to cook. And when he cooked the meal, of course, we all ate the meal that he prepared for us. And he was a chef. So this is the favours he did.
Even behind bars, Frankie Fraser remained a formidable presence.
I led the riot at Parkhurst Prison, and this prison officer said I cut one of his ears off, and they couldn't find it. Of course they couldn't, because I put it down the toilet, flushed the chain, and it's floating somewhere off the Isle of Wight. And for the rest of his career, he was known as Ear Harry. Anyway, I was doing 15 years there and found guilty. Found not guilty of some bad charges, but guilty. Judge, anything to say? I said, yes, my lord. I realise you'll have to increase my sentence, but could you please make it up into even numbers, as I hate odd numbers. So he had a smile on his face. I thought, well, I cracked it here. Might only give me a year, make it 16, or 3, make it 18. I took in consideration your dislike of odd numbers. I will have to increase your sentence, but I will make it up into even numbers. I'll give you another 5 years consecutive. That'll make it 20 even numbers. I shouted out, you dirty so-and-so. He said, take him away. And I've done a lot. Lost all my remission and everything, done every day.
After spending years in prison for his role in the torture gang, Charlie Richardson was released back into the world.
I bought a car site when I first came home, offices above it and all that, and Frank just come over to see me, started talking about law, and I said, phone him up. He said, you got his number? I said, of course I have. Done the phone number, clear Frank, asked for law, and he was on the other end. Frank was good, you know, talking on the phone to him. So I'm only a lowly solicitor's clerk. He said, but that article you wrote in the Times is wonderful. Wonderful, genius. Built him right up. And he said, I could never understand why you give that nice man, Mr. Richardson, 25 years. He realised it was us then. But we didn't let him get away with it. We come out, we still aggravated him, you know what I mean?
It's a question that still divides opinion. In the era of the 20th century London gangsters, violence was open, visible and brutal. Today, crime may be less public, but it's far harder to see and even harder to control. So was London ever truly safer when men like these ruled its streets?
They were two terrific guys, Charlie and Eddie, and people who was behind with their rent, Charlie and Eddie paid their rent from them.
Many members of the general public locally in and around Bethnal Green were quite praiseworthy of the Krays. They did give money to charities, they did help out old people, they did put money into boxing clubs and all of those things. So in that respect, they were quite astute in generating good public relations with the general public.
You could go to the twins and say, look, I'm really in trouble, I've got an electricity bill I can't pay, or the old man's in prison, and they would go, don't worry, there's a few quid, look after you and the kids, make sure you've got the food in the cupboard. And we used to give money to the elderly people. We'd always buy them their drinks on a Sunday. They never took liberties, they had their Guinness and maybe a little whiskey, and we used to give them their shopping for the weekend, always buy their joint, that sort of thing, and the kids, their ice cream money.
If you want to call them Robin Hood figures, let's do it. They were naughty, bad, hurt people, but they gave to the poor. And they looked after their own, and they did a lot of charity, good and bad.
I suppose in a sense it was a safer place when they was around here, because you didn't have the liberty takers, you know, taking liberties. If anyone took any liberties, it'd be them, nobody else.
You know, kids were safe in our environment, and elderly people were safe in our environment. Villains weren't safe in our environment. You come over across the manor and you started taking liberties, then we'd sort you.
The names of London's original gangsters have passed into legend, their exploits retold in books, film and countless headlines. Their era may have passed, but their place in the story of London's underworld remains impossible to ignore. There's only one question left worth asking. Any regrets?
No regrets, no. Except one. You've got to guess what that is. Getting caught.
Thanks for watching this journey through the original gangsters of London. For more stories from Britain's underworld, make sure to like and subscribe and comment below what stories you'd like to see on the channel. This is Matt from Underworld Uncut. See you on the next one.